So welcome to the Technical Steering Committee for May 15th, 2019. We'll follow the agenda as posted in the issue, which was issued number 704 in the TSC repo. First of all, we'll start out. Are there any announcements that people would like to share?
I think it is worth announcing that the call for papers for Node plus JS Interactive 2019 in sunny Montreal is open and awaiting your papers. Submit them on the website. I don't have the link right now, but it's on my Twitter somewhere, probably buried between like the 100 tweets I did in the last day because I've been busy. Someone stop me from talking anymore, please.
Yeah, no, that one's good, and I guess it's a call for talks. Papers may or may not be required, right?
Yes.
Please submit. If anybody, while we're talking, gets the link, you can add it to the minutes. Any other announcements? No. Okay, let's move on to the things tagged for the agenda. So the first one, 27246, it actually was on the agenda to make sure we got enough TSC approvals. It does, in fact, have 2 TSC approvals. So unless anybody has something that they'd like to talk about, I think we can move on to the next one. Nope. Okay, so then let's move on to the next one. That is 26418. This is refactor the buffer benchmarks. It's a PR related to removing a number of benchmarks to try and shorten the runtime. It does look like there was a call for a vote in the issue, and that was seconded. I guess the assessment was that we weren't going to reach consensus, and that everything we needed to do to try and reach consensus had been exhausted. So it's, I guess, Rich, did you call for the vote there, or you seconded it, right?
I seconded it. I forget who called for it. I think Matteo did.
Okay, since he's not here, do you want to talk to it a little bit as the seconder?
So it's a benchmark refactor. There is opposition from one collaborator. And the discussion is relatively concise and complete. I think it lays out pretty clearly the pros and cons of what's happening. And if we get a resolution on whether, yes, we should do this, the upsides outweigh the downsides, or no, we should not do this, the downsides outweigh the upsides, that would be great.
Okay, so do we think we need to ask people to vote here, or just let that vote continue in the issue itself?
I think it can continue in the issue itself. We don't have a whole lot of people here.
Okay, so
if you're here and you haven't voted yet, please do, even if it's just to abstain.
Can someone please put a link into the chat?
Sure, I will grab it here from the minute.
I'm on it, Michael. You just go ahead and keep running the meeting. I got the link. Oh, no, you beat me to it. Never mind.
Yeah, I got it. It was easy. Okay, so moving on then to the next issue, which is doc update to the TSC charter. So this is issue number 698. I just put this on the agenda because it does affect our governance, and thought that make sure everybody is aware. So please take a look if you have any objections. Otherwise, I'm asking that Miles add that to his list of things that he brings to the board, because I guess I'm a little uncertain, but probably this charter change needs to be made by the board. It moves the reviewers to be the CPC, I think, subsequently, but probably this last one should be done by the board.
We have a meeting next Friday, so I can get that on the agenda.
Okay. Unless anybody has any questions, I think we could move on from that. Okay, so let's move on to 476, which is tracking issue for updating the TSC on board meeting. So Miles, I guess, anything more you want to say?
We have a meeting next Friday.
Yeah.
I guess this isn't exactly related to just the board meetings, but I'll take this moment. I guess we'd get this in the open governance, but the CPC is now officially formed. So one thing that we will want to look into now. Oh, and I guess another thing to add, this is an interesting bit from the board perspective. Sarah Novotny, who was Google's board representative, has left Google, and I will be taking on Google's corporate seat, is the plan right now. And so we're in the midst of transitioning that and figuring out exactly how that works, and doing that. In the meantime, by the current governance of the CPC, the Node.js project is still eligible for a board member as a community representative. That is one for the entire project, so it's not one TSC, one ComCom, which we've had in the past. So it likely would be one representative from both top-level committees. The CPC has not kicked off any of that election stuff yet. But I would like to encourage us, and like maybe we could start an issue in the admin repo. It's never too early to start having these discussions. And like now that the CPC is bootstrapped and as far as I'm concerned, chartered by the board, they're in a position to approve of whoever that new board member is. So I think it is a good time for us to kick that off. As far as I'm concerned, and Michael, you can chime in if I'm off, but the way the CPC charter was drafted, it assures us a board seat for this first year, and that board seat, how it's determined, is left up to us. So
yes,
and so I think that it would be prudent to kick that conversation off as soon as possible with what was I going to say? With Sarah leaving Google, I'm going to be transitioning into that role pretty soon, if not like in the upcoming meeting. So with that being said, like we are missing an extra community member who can be at the board. And so, yeah, we should get that going.
yeah, I agree. I was just waiting until the CPC got to the point where it could sort of approve. I think it's kind of like the CPC might have the final, they might have the ability now to say, okay, let's confirm our governance or not. As long as nothing changes there, then, exactly what you said is the case, that for the first year, we have a board representative. So I agree we should open an issue. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to go ahead and do that?
I think it would make sense for you to go ahead and do that as the chair. That works for me.
Yep. So I can go and open that, and basically we'll say, we want to decide how we'll elect the representative, and I don't know if we should be starting to add. We probably want to answer that question before we ask for volunteers or who wants to nominate. But yeah, I'll kick that off. Let me take a quick note there. And I guess the thing to add is I think it does say that it would, I'm not sure if it says where that person would come from. I think it might say that they would be from either the TSC or the ComCom. But
I believe, but I could be wrong, that it's the charter, and I have to dig it up, actually just says elected by Node.js.
Okay.
So I think it's up to us as a project. So I think based on our governance, it would be the TSC and the ComCom need to just reach consensus on where it comes from.
Okay. Where I was going was people should think about if they're interested in putting their name forward. Now's the time to start thinking about that, because the call for volunteers or nominations may come out fairly soon after. Okay, anything else on the board side of things?
Nothing that I can think about for right now. Michael, if you could toss that issue, is it on the project board for the board?
Which one?
The charter change?
Let me see. I don't think so. I created it, but I can.
I'm on it. I got it.
Okay, you found it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
One thing that would really help me for everyone, when we take things like a charter change to the board, it's important that we have consensus on it before the board even reviews it, because legal needs to review it as well. So if folks could take time this week to review it, put in comments, sign off on it, we should have all of the sign-offs on these charter changes by the end of the week. I will escalate it to Brian Warner, who's the PGM from the Linux Foundation, who's helping handle things for us over at the OpenJS Foundation. We likely want to ping that to the CPC as well as a heads up about what we're doing. And then we get it on the agenda for the board that needs to get reviewed by legal. So what I think makes the most sense from a timeline perspective is get as many sign-offs as we can this week. I'll kick off the process of getting it put on the board agenda. And then in next Wednesday's meeting, or I guess we have 9 people on, or do we have, how many members are on the TSC now?
I'd have to count because after Rod left. I mean,
18.
does this
18.
okay, 18, yeah. So does the TSC charter update require more of a consensus than anything else?
It doesn't require consensus beyond what we have, but we don't have quorum right now. So we
Right,
can't
but my point is consensus means enough approvals and no objections, and there aren't any objections. So not saying that we don't
It's
want to
ultimately
get
up to the board anyway.
Pardon?
Charter change for the TSC is ultimately up to the board anyway.
Yeah, but it's more, I have seen in the past that if there isn't clear consensus, that it will get sent back from the board.
Sure.
So for me, when I bring it to the board, I just very much like it being in a position where we have lots of clear sign-off and that we've had a meeting with quorum where we've agreed to it.
Yeah,
that's fair enough.
Because then I can just bluntly say to the board, we have consensus on this and it's unanimous.
Oh, okay. Right. Anything else to talk about on that front before we move to the next issue? No. Okay, let's move on to the strategic initiatives then. And let's start with modules.
Modules are moving. Create require. I think we mentioned this in the last meeting. Landed in 12.2. That was a big movement. There's a couple of major contentious issues are the big ones we're working through right now. One is file extension resolution and whether or not the node resolution algorithm should be on by default. The other is whether or not we should allow for dual mode modules with a single specifier. So should you be able to import Lodash and require Lodash and have it work but resolve to different files? It potentially creates multiple instances in the cache that are shadowing each other. So there's a debate about whether or not the developer experience there outweighs the potential hazards. And then there is a discussion right now about export maps. This is one of the things I'm more excited about. So it's the idea of creating a new field in the package JSON called exports, which would allow you to explicitly state all of the deep modules that exist, and it would actually lock down the modules so you couldn't just go in and grab arbitrary files. It's not exactly something that we could call security because you could always just deep search through node modules for any file you wanted. But I think it is a nice advantage to developers to be able to have an explicit contract about what files within their module are public and which ones are private. And it's something that I think we're interested in exploring for both ESM and CommonJS. Then the last one that's kind of being tossed around right now, but we don't have any form of consensus over, is whether or not there's a way for us to make it possible to require ESM, similar to how we have a possibility right now of importing CommonJS. This is controversial, to say the least, but those are kind of the major topics that we're debating right now. Other than that, something that's not so controversial but just requires engineering effort is the new version of the custom loader API. The current version has some we don't like the API design of the current version. There's a new version that's being made, but it has memory leaks and it's kind of slow. So we're working on trying to improve that. I'm still hopeful that we're on a timeline where we could be unflagging by October, which makes me pretty excited. We're handling bug reports as they come in, and we're working through the specific issues that we do not currently have consensus on.
Okay, the next one is OpenSSL evolution. Now, Rod has left the TSC since the last meeting.
And that one's also been completed. The policy has been merged, the issue's been closed. So I have a pull request open to move that to the completed list.
Ah, okay.
Pull request 705 in the TSC repo. Just go and approve it, please.
Okay, is that the one you just did put in the yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess nothing else really to talk about that. So moving on to the next one, we don't think we have Anna this week. No, so Mateo, no. Miles, governance, anything on the governance side?
CPC, I think that I've somehow managed to squirrel everything I needed to update here into all the other issues where I've been talking. So I think we're good.
Okay, sounds good. I don't think we have Jeremiah. V8 currency, no. Open web standards, anything to say on that front?
TC39's meeting is coming up just after Berlin's, like in Berlin, just after JSConf EU. If there are folks who are interested in attending, it is possible to come as an invited expert, although, in general, because of the proximity and how many people may be coming, if you're interested in coming as an invited expert, I would like to work with that individual to make sure that there isn't a conflict due to the organization that they represent, and B, that they have some sort of reason for being there aside from like it's just cool to be in the room. But I'm happy to work with people and help them figure out how to get there if it's something that they want to be doing. I'm excited to say that top level await is coming along, and there's a potential that we might be trying to go for stage 3. That's really cool. Other than that, we're going to be doing an open standards session at the OpenJS Collaborator Summit. Daniel Ehrenberg, Little Dan on GitHub, and I have been talking quite a bit about how to best engage with our community and to like help people be successful and get their feedback heard, but like, setting people up for success and setting good expectations. It's definitely something we want to ramp up, and now that we're a broader foundation, we have more stakeholders. So like in general, if people are interested in working on more things in the standards world, I'd love to hear what you want to work on. I think there's also room within like our user feedback and enterprise user feedback initiatives to potentially partner with TC39 to help them use that as an avenue to get ecosystem feedback.
Okay, looking at the next ones, I don't think we have Chopin, James. Joey's not here, right?
James is here.
Oh, James. Okay, James. So James on Quick.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a new one. Working on adding and implementing Quick. It's in a different repo, the Node.js/Quick repo. It's eventually going to be evolve into HTTP3 as well. But the idea is to implement the basic Quick protocol plus HTTP3. It's coming along nicely. I should have a non-seg faulty version within the next week or two. And I plan on showing it at the Collaborator Summit. If for whoever wants to see it, and just so folks know, for full disclosure, both Nearform and Protocol Lab are sponsoring my time to work on it. So yeah.
So sorry, just taking quick notes. Time on it. Okay. I don't have Joey and build resources then. Rich.
Yeah, I was gonna discuss it with build folks at the meeting this week, but it got canceled. So hopefully more next week. That's all I really have that's relevant.
Okay. Okay, and NAPI work continues on some of the key issues. So around async worker, we have work through some of the issues and just need to start implementing the ideas we've come up with to address them, as well as some work on evangelism, putting together workshops and so forth. Okay, so that is our strategic initiatives review. So back to the agenda. That takes us to the end of the agenda. Are there any other things people want to talk about before we close the public session? Okay, if not, if people can stick around, I'm just going to stop the